Okay, will the Pittsburgh Penguins win a third Stanley Cup in a row? And how can they do it? Bearing in mind that they're basically on the edge of the playoffs in the wildcard positions, which in the East is a dangerous position to be in. Even though their form has improved the last couple of weeks, it's hard to win the Stanley Cup at the best of times. Every team that has got into the playoffs can prove how hard it is. Doesn't matter if you sweep the series, you've still got to win intense games. That's where you've got to up your level. And the amount of hockey that Pittsburgh have played regularly since Crosby's been with the side, so you've got to think all the playoffs. It's an 82 game regular season, so you factor that in, plus playoffs. You could, if you play 4 7 game series at 40, that's a lot of games. That's 28 extra games up to maximum a year. That's in an entire player's career. That's a couple of full extra seasons added on to his regular season games. So players like Crosby, Malkin, Phil Kessel, yeah, he has come over from Toronto, but he didn't play much playoff hockey in Toronto. But again, players like that, that is a lot of extra games. And Phil Kessel has not missed a game in regulation in 500 odd appearances, something like 300. He's on an Iron Man streak. That is a lot of extra game time. You compare it with other sports. Football managers over here in Europe complain about fixture congestion and how it tires the players out, and it's very rare that a player plays every minute of every season because it's just physically exhausting. And that's a problem that Pittsburgh are facing. Yeah, they get the bye week and only get the All-Star break. There is an argument for getting rid of the bye week and making the All-Star break dead middle of the season, having a week off before and a week off after. Make it a 2-week mid-season break that other leagues do in mid-season. There is an argument for that because the amount of hockey Pittsburgh have played over the last 10 years, on top of their regular seasons, so they've won 3 Stanley Cups since 2009. So we've got better than one the last 8 years. They've won 3 Stanley Cups, but since Crosby's been with the side, they've been I think they missed the playoffs like once or twice, but they've regularly been either in the playoffs, first round, second round, third round, getting through. Obviously, winning 3 times. They've been in the final, I think, 4 times or something since Crosby's been there in the actual Stanley Cup final. That is a lot. That's 28 extra games a season if it's a 7-game series. Maximum 28 extra games a season if you do 7-game series every time. That is a lot of extra games to play on top of an 82-game season. So if you're a player and you play every single game of that season, that's over 100 games. That is a lot. Then you've got taking into account internationals, pre-seasons, exhibition matches. That is a lot to put on a body in a very contact sport. That is a very physical contact sport. That's why I think they probably won't do it this year. It's just the sheer amount of games they would have had to have played. The amount of 7-game series they've had, that is a lot, and they've lost pieces. So Marc-Andre Fleury moving to Vegas is a weakness. They need that kind of experience in net. They haven't got that anymore. Matt Murray is a great young goaltender, but he's having a real struggle this season. Real struggle. And he's had personal bereavement to deal with, which is sad. But I think this break could do him good. Let him focus the mind. Because you've got to understand that some of these players at Pittsburgh have played a lot of hockey. And when depth gets lacking at times, when injuries strike, so Chris Letang is a prime example of a key player who's regularly on the injured list or on the treatment table or playing hurt. It does take an effect. Crosby's missed a lot of games through injury. It does have a cumulative effect. Playing that much hockey takes a toll out of a player, physically and up here. Because when you're mentally tired, injuries can happen. Some of the defeats they've had this season have been bad. And when they win well. But when they lose, sometimes it's a heavy hounding. There are other teams that I think in the West are better than them, and in the East. If you were to have a 7-game series, I still think Pittsburgh will get into the playoffs. I don't think they have as much energy as they did have last year or the year before. They played too much playoff hockey. They've played too much regular season hockey on top of that. I think it's a step too far. The way NHL's done it now, since the lockout, they're trying to stop the dynasties, and there hasn't been a dynasty since the Edmonton Oilers in the late 80s, early 90s. That was the last time a team won that many, and the Oilers before that. I think it is a more competitive league. But other teams that have played a lot of playoff hockey lately and won Stanley Cups. Chicago and LA are also floundering, and they're actually at the moment outside the playoffs. That's the first time in over a decade that both LA and Chicago from the Western Conference is outside the playoffs, and Chicago's in a complete nosedive at the moment. They're completely plummeting. They're losing badly in games. Again, cumulative effect. A lot of games, a lot of players playing a lot of hockey, injuries. That's why Pittsburgh. I don't physically see Pittsburgh doing it. I remember LA and Chicago swapped Stanley Cups for a couple of years. LA one year, Chicago the next. LA, Chicago, because they were the two best teams in the Western Conference. That is not so this year. Vegas is trying to cat amongst the pigeons, and Boston in the East, again, I think is better than Pittsburgh. I see several teams in the West better than Pittsburgh. So if Pittsburgh were to get the Stanley Cup final and they came up against a variety of teams, they could be in serious trouble. The Central Division just looks like they could just slaughter Pittsburgh in a 7-game series. One-off games is a different thing, but 7 games, if they had home ice advantage, so Winnipeg, Nashville, St. Louis, Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, that's most of the Central Division. They're not all going to get in unless they get so good that the wild cards work in their favour, but that is a division that looks like it could slaughter Pittsburgh. Vegas just look like they're going to dominate them. Calgary have picked up. I can see 7, 8, 9 teams in the West. Even if they don't make the playoffs, that's still better than Pittsburgh when it comes to playoff hockey. If they were to have a series, if the playoffs would start now, Pittsburgh would be a wild card, and that means they don't have home ice advantage, and they need that. And there's some teams in the East as well. The East, I think, is the weaker conference, which could go in Pittsburgh's favour. But if they lose a couple of games, they drop out. The congestion in the league between in the middle bit, the blob, is too intense. That's where the Stanley Cup is going to be won and lost, is the next month and a half, well before playoffs start. I think even before trade deadline, that's where the Stanley Cup's won and lost for Pittsburgh. If they hit a rough patch or have injuries again, be it in goal or another key defenseman or Malkin or Crosby, they are in serious trouble. Because Phil Kessel likes going below the radar. He didn't like his time in Toronto because he had to be the main man. Here, he's not the main man. He doesn't have to deal with the press all the time. He's playing really well. If Malkin or Crosby gets injured or ill with flu, for example, he doesn't like that. He'll be off his stride. Chris Letang, they've got to keep him fit and healthy as long as possible, because if he goes down their blue line, it just looks all over the place at times. Jari in net, I think he's a little bit better than Matt Murray at the moment, but again, very young, inexperienced goaltender. How will he do under playoff pressure, should they get there? How will he do under the running pressure of the last month and a half of the regular season? Again, there is still a lot of hockey to play, but time's running out. If they go on that little wobble, that could be their playoff run done. I'm not saying it's a bad thing they miss out, though. That's a lot of extra hockey they've had to play over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. A lot of brutal series that take a lot out of up here as well as physically. So that's why I think they possibly won't do it. If they do it, it obviously establishes them as the greatest team of the modern era, but I honestly see it very difficult for them to get a third Stanley Cup in a row. It's hard to defend a title. It's harder each year in professional sports. I can seriously see Pittsburgh just not doing it. And that's not me being disingenuous. Other teams are playing much better at the moment. And most of them are in the West. Which could help Pittsburgh in the playoffs to go far, but the amount of extra cumulative hockey they've played on their bodies and on their minds is I think what's hurting them as well. Is they're tired. Crosby is shattered. He has to be. Bearing in mind he's had a couple of Olympics in there as well, which is a different style of hockey. It's less physical, but that's a lot of extra games he's had to play over the last 10 years. Basically, since he's been in the league, he's played a lot of extra games that other players haven't. Malkin, Kessel, these players will get tired eventually. They played a lot of hockey, and it could do Pittsburgh. It could do them. I think they're begging for the All-Star break now. They need a rest. They're on good form, but they need some rest, recuperation, and they need to get someone signed before the trade deadline. They need to retool a little bit, add some strength. But at the moment, I don't see where they're going to get those players from. Anyway, that's my view on it. I don't think they do it. If they do, I'm happy to prove wrong. But my team, the Winnipeg Jets, are doing really well in the Central, which is I think the toughest division in the NHL. The Western Conference has, I think, better playoff teams in it, and unknown quantities. The Eastern Conference, I think, is weaker. The Metro, the Atlantic Division is just hopeless. Teams like Montreal are nowhere, Ottawa nowhere. They both made playoffs last year. They are an out of control forest fire, really. They look hopeless. So yeah. And Pittsburgh's played a lot of hockey as well. I think that series against Ottawa was the most physically demanding series there's been in the last 20 years on the players. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, place your comments below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.